Let me give folks a second to find it here. All right, come on in, everybody. Welcome back to another Tennessee Holler Facebook live stream. I'm Justin Canoe. I run the Tennessee Holler. Appreciate everybody tuning in. As always, we have all of these other hollers across the state, throughout Tennessee, and that's all thanks to your support. We really appreciate all the small dollar donations that go a long way. Also want to let you know that we have a sponsor now. Elisa Parker is a realtor. She is supporting us, and you can support us by supporting her. If you know anybody buying or selling a home in Middle Tennessee, send them Elisa's way. Today, we're going to be talking about an exciting event that's happening this weekend, sort of a backlash event, but an empowerment event and a exciting event that hopefully will keep everybody's energy up for the important work that lies ahead. It's the Rally for Abortion Justice Saturday. It's happening in the whole country, but in a few different cities here in Tennessee, including Murfreesboro, Nashville, Memphis, Chattanooga, Knoxville, Cookeville, and the Tri-Cities. I think a couple more now too. And we have a few people who are involved in this here with us. How are you guys doing today?
Great.
Well, why don't we go around and introduce ourselves? Francie, let's start with you.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Francie Hunt. I'm the executive director for Tennessee Advocates for Planned Parenthood. And back in 2017, I was one of the folks that helped organize the Women's March. Did it again in 2018 and 2020. So I'm really glad to be here with such excellent folks like Lily and Kathy. So thank you for inviting us today.
Kathy.
Hi, I'm Kathy Watts. I'm the chair of the Rutherford County Democratic Party, and I'm also one of the organizers for the event in Murfreesboro.
Awesome. And Lily, how about you?
Hi, I'm Lily Rimbold. I am the Public Relations Committee Chair for the Rutherford County Democratic Women and one of the lead organizers of a new group working with TAPP called the Rutherford County Action Council, trying to create a more supportive network of people in Rutherford County for Planned Parenthood, and also one of the organizers for this Saturday.
Awesome. So I want to talk about what to expect this Saturday in a minute, but first I just want to talk about kind of where this came from. My understanding is that it's sort of sprouted up in response to the Texas War on Women, the abortion ban that was passed down there, a draconian law that bans abortion. You know, it's a heartbeat bill, bans abortion after 6 weeks, and really just is, you know, one of the ugliest bills we've seen. It turns citizens into bounty hunters. It has a $10,000 reward for people who turn in anybody who aids and abets an abortion. Francie, I guess, why don't you help us out and understand what that law says and, you know, its relation to this march that's happening?
Yeah, I think that it's important to kind of step back and see the context that Tennessee is in right now. We're really bookended by two very important legal cases that will that have the potential to roll back Roe v. Wade, which is right now federal law and constitutional position that protects a person's right to privacy with their medical provider, particularly around abortion when it's before pre-viability, meaning before a fetus can survive outside the womb. So it's a very important piece of settled law that now has been called into question, first with Texas. That's one end of the bookend. Recently, you know, we found that the Supreme Court failed millions of Texans, you know, in the dead of night. And just like what happened to us last year in Tennessee in the dead of night when our abortion ban got passed and signed by Governor Bill Lee. Recently, at the beginning of September, in the dead of night, the Supreme Court turned its back on 50 years of precedent, rendering Roe v. Wade effectively meaningless in Texas, which means that, you know, this unprecedented law enables anyone to sue thy neighbor. We call it a sue thy neighbor law, as you mentioned, which enables people who are either help or intend to help someone get an abortion after 6 weeks. They could be sued by a neighbor, a distant relative, an abusive partner, or even a stranger from out of state. And those individuals can win up to $10,000 for each successful claim. And I think the important thing to stress here is that for many Black and Latino and Indigenous people, those with low incomes and people in rural areas, they're going to face and already now face the greatest barriers to abortion access if this unconstitutional law takes effect and spreads across the country. So, right now, the bottom line is that abortion is virtually inaccessible for patients across Texas. And we already hear through folks like Justice Sotomayor and her dissent that people are crossing the border to try to access safe healthcare, and it's outrageous. And
Right.
On the other side of the bookend, we have the Mississippi case, which is up in December 1st, which will take up a 15-week ban.
Well, and what we've learned over many years is that making abortion illegal doesn't make abortion go away. It just makes people do it in unsafe, quote unquote, illegal ways. Lily, what are we to expect this weekend with the march? What's going to happen?
So this weekend at our Murfreesboro event, we are kind of bookending it with a little bit of a rally in the beginning to kind of get everybody ready to go, make sure everybody has their signs and a general idea of what we're doing. And then we'll take a march around part of downtown Murfreesboro, get some visibility on a busier street with some traffic, do some chants and things like that. And then we'll make our way back to our home base and have some more speakers from organizations that are working with us to sponsor the event, and just people to get everybody fired up and ready to continue this fight. This is definitely a start, but it won't be the end of this. This is going to be a continuing thing. And so we're trying to make this Saturday really big to make our support network as big as possible as we continue fighting all of this.
Kathy, how did the party decide to get involved with this event?
Well, abortion justice is something that most Democrats believe in, and we felt like this was something we really had to do. We were all so appalled by the law in Texas and Tennessee, so much like Texas, and that this could happen here tomorrow. And we've got to protect anyone who wants an abortion and allow them to get that health care that they deserve.
Kathy, one of the sentences that I heard someone say, I think she was actually a Republican who said it, or a sister. She was a sister of someone who had an abortion, maybe a converted Republican. And she said that Republicans want to make abortions illegal. Democrats want to make them unnecessary through supporting women, through, raising the wage, through, Medicaid expansion, programs that actually lift people up. Is that something that resonates with you?
Absolutely. I don't think anybody really wants to have an abortion, but it happens because it's so difficult to raise a child if you don't have any support. And we shouldn't have to justify to anyone why we want an abortion. We should be able to have one regardless. It's all about our bodily autonomy. We don't tell you what to do with your body, so don't tell us what to do with ours.
Francie, if it was men that had to carry the baby, would we even be having this discussion?
Probably not. I mean, I think the centerpiece for our folks to understand here is that, everyone should have the freedom and power to control their own body and decisions and lives. And, when a few people in power can impose their beliefs on everyone, we're not truly free. And, Tennessee is in the danger zone here. I mean, we see what they've already done with so many restrictions that they've placed on abortion care. And so this isn't something that's going to be isolated to Texas. We see that this could happen in Tennessee shortly. I mean, we have Governor Bill Lee and an anti-choice supermajority, which could likely pass similar legislation this spring. So if we don't act now, abortion may become illegal in Tennessee in like 2022. So it's really important for people to participate on Saturday, learn about what's going on, raise their voice, and we can work to stave off the harm as much as we possibly can.
Lily, what do you think when you see people running around saying my body, my choice when it comes to vaccines, and co-opting the language that has been used for the abortion fight for so long, especially when there's no exception even for rape in these laws.
Exactly. It's honestly very frustrating. There's a big difference between getting a vaccine in order to help the greater good and kind of contribute to your community, um, and making a personal decision for your own healthcare and the betterment of your life. I think that we've all not been having the greatest time during COVID, and I think that that's a solution for us. And the fact that they're trying to turn very personal uh, verbiage that has been used for many years to try and fight for such a sacred right for people, and their access to healthcare. It's honestly very, very frustrating, and it doesn't seem like it should be that hard to just go and do one simple thing to try and help everybody get through what's been a really hard time for everyone involved on both sides. So,
Francie, what's next here with the Supreme Court and with these decisions? You know, are they going to overturn Roe versus Wade? I mean, I think the numbers are something like 75% of the country doesn't want to see that happen. Even a lot of, you know, anti-reproductive freedom people don't want to see Roe versus Wade overturned. So what comes next?
Yeah, and I love that you made that point. 70% of Americans want Roe v. Wade to remain law of the land. And I mean, but I'll tell you, as a Tennessean here, we are, you know, we're worried about SCOTUS, but I'm worried even more about our leadership here within our own state. You know, remember, I guess to level set for people who are listening, Tennessee already passed bans. So there's an omnibus abortion ban that they passed last year in the dead of night, again, where abortion would be banned at almost every gestational age. And then they also included a reasons ban, meaning that you couldn't have an abortion based on particular reasons, such as having a child with Down syndrome, for example. So they put those put that law in place. And we also have a trigger law, what's called a trigger law, which means that if Roe v. Wade is undermined in any way or diminished in any way, in whole or in part, it automatically makes a ban go into effect here in Tennessee. So you can see where, you know, if the Mississippi case, which the oral arguments begin December 1st, that could have an impact on Tennessee. And if something were to happen legislatively, as Texas has had happen, it could also impact us almost immediately. So we're absolutely in the danger zone. I think for folks, including Republicans who are pro-choice, most Republicans are also pro-choice. Actually, when you poll them, I think for many folks, this has not felt dangerous because they've taken for granted the fact that Roe is settled law. But now that it's we're seeing what's actually happening. I think the Supreme Court was alarming in their decision around Texas. When you have a justice saying that this is a serious consideration and using that language for the first time, which we haven't heard, and since 1973, when Roe first passed, it's very disturbing. And we do have a new court. Again, for folks that don't follow this closely, we have a very new Supreme Court with the death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and then bringing on Kavanaugh and Amy Coney Barrett. I mean, that we have a very new landscape before us.
Do you find, obviously this is a fraught subject, and when I ran for Congress, it came up all the time, and it's really at the center of mind for a lot of people here in Tennessee, and it seems like everybody sort of has their mind made up one way or another. Do you find that there is ground to be made up when it comes to this discussion in Tennessee? Any of you, especially those of you at the party that are out there, in a partisan way, which Francie kind of can't be. Are you able to have this discussion with people and find common ground, or is it like, no, your baby killers, stop talking to me, which is what it was when I was out there, telling people I was a Democrat?
Well, I was stuck on an airplane next to a Trump supporter for 2.5 hours on my way to Mexico in May. And he got to listen to me explain to him all the reasons why abortion needs to stay legal. And he couldn't get up and leave. So usually you can't get them to have a conversation with you, but he had to sit there and listen to me, or he didn't have to, but he did. And he was fairly reasonable. And he did say a couple of times, well, I have to agree with you there about different things. And so I think if we could have a conversation with them, I think maybe we could convince them of some of these things, but they don't want to talk about it. And I usually start every conversation with Republican people types that one, we don't want to kill little babies, and two, we don't want to take away your guns. And then I try to start from there, but it doesn't usually go very far.
Right. I mean, the one thing I'll say is, I think that a lot of them, maybe not all, but they genuinely feel this way. Like I have a neighbor who definitely didn't vote for me. And, when I told him I was running, I said to him, I have two things to tell you. I said, one is, I'm a Democrat. I was running as a Democrat. He said, yeah, I kind of figured. And then I said, and I'm going to run for Congress. And he said, well, I'm not going to vote for you. And I said, well, why not? And this was the issue that came up. And as we talked about it, I mean, he almost was about to cry. It was emotional for him. So, I think a lot of times when we have this discussion, we talk to each other as though we're trolling each other or trying to trigger each other. But I think there are people who genuinely feel this way on both sides. Lily, have you had any conversations where you felt like, you were able to resonate with some people on this topic that maybe don't agree with you about other things?
The most common ground that I've ever been able to find with anybody is the exceptions for rape and incest that often get left out of bills, like what we've seen go down in Texas, which is obviously not included. Those exceptions are not included in that bill. That's the only time I've ever been able to really find any common ground with people, because people are kind of the mind, from what I've found, that if you're if you just weren't responsible enough or don't know how to use protection or something, then it's your fault and you're stuck with the outcome there. But I have found that a lot of people will at least agree on the fact that there should be an exception for people who end up pregnant, not by choice or coming out of abusive or rape situations or ancestral situations, things like that. That's the most common ground I've been able to find. But it's not something
hard.
That a lot of people are willing to open up and kind of change their minds about, because there's a lot of fear and a lot of really aggressive imagery that's used to kind of make people feel like they should be against abortions when they're not truly understanding, A, what's happening, and B, why some people need that, and why it's not really their business whether people need it or not. They should just have access to it. So,
right. We actually saw that on the UT Knoxville campus this week. There was a group that showed up there with some really ugly pamphlets and, were shouting things at the students as they walk by, and it caused quite a stir. And that happens in a lot of places. You mentioned rape and incest. It's important for people to realize that rape actually does happen more than you might think. And people do get impregnated from rape more than you might think. And, it always seems to be only when it comes home to roost with people in your family that this starts to change people's minds. We've got Desjardins paying for abortions while claiming to be pro-life, and he's not alone. Francie, just as we kind of wrap up here, what would you like people to take away from this? And, as you ask them to join you this weekend?
I think the one message I would want to share, first of all, everybody show up on Saturday. So we can put somewhere in the chat here a way for you to sign up and attend any of the 11 rallies that are happening across Tennessee. You're absolutely invited.
Not to interrupt you, but our resident troll, Carlos, who has been spouting out all of the, anti-choice talking points in the comments, actually does agree that it should be allowed in the cases of rape, incest, and health of the mother. So I just wanted to point that out because, I don't tend to agree with Carlos on much, but he is a loyal watcher of the show. And, I just wanted to highlight that. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry, Francie.
And that's great. I'm glad that Carlos weighed in, because it shows that decisions around pregnancies can be very complex. And that it is for that reason that those decisions, we believe, need to be left up to that pregnant person and their family and not to government. But, to your what you had asked, Justin, in terms of like, what's ahead of us and what to focus on. In addition to showing up on Saturday, which I think everyone ought to do, remember, I think for folks that are pro-choice, that are kind of see that we need to have abortion justice, they may feel discouraged because the Supreme Court feels so far away as a target. And I want to just remind people that, when Roe passed, it was not the Supreme Court that afforded us bodily autonomy. That our right to bodily sovereignty was won by us, the people, grassroots, everyday people that stood up and used their voice. There was a groundswell of movement, voice, and that has not changed. Everything that, I don't know if people are familiar with the Little Prince, that book, but there's a part of the story in there that says the king can't create a rule that the people won't follow. And so always remember that everyday people, we have the power. That is what makes a democracy work. And the places where we can actually influence right now, the Women's Health Protection Act, which actually makes abortion a federally protected right, already passed in the House, which is incredible. And I think that there are ways that we can raise our voice to make sure that can pass on its Senate side as well. I mean, we have, this is a great test of Democratic power at the federal level, and where will they stand on reproductive freedom and abortion justice. So we've got to continue to fight here in Tennessee and all 95 counties to ensure that people can still access the health care that we all need.
Great. Kathy, any final thoughts as we sign off here?
Just want to remind everybody that the event in Murfreesboro starts at noon. We should be done by 2. So if you want to get to Nashville for the 4:00 event, you have plenty of time to get there. We invite all of our neighbors in the neighboring counties that are perhaps south of us and they think Nashville's too far to go. We want them to come here. We hope to have a great event with lots of great speakers and a lot of energy. So we can't wait to see you on Saturday at noon.
Where?
That's a good question. We are dotting our I's and crossing our T's, but it looks like it will be Civic Plaza in downtown Murfreesboro.
Okay, great. Lily, any final thoughts?
Just if anybody's interested in joining us, we have event pages on Facebook for all of the events in Tennessee. Just make sure you're signing up there so that we know who we're expecting and can be prepared for everybody. But we've got a lot of organizing that's gone into this, and we've spent a lot of hours working on it. So we're really excited to join everybody together and get this kicked off.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all for joining us here. Appreciate it. And I'm going to try to bring my daughter to one. I think we might come to you guys in Murfreesboro or Nashville. I only get so many hours where she's paying attention to anything. So, but I appreciate that you guys are putting this on, and I hope everybody will come out and join you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Talk to you guys later.
Okay.
So those marches are Saturday. Thank you all for joining us. Just want to share one last thing that occurred to me as we were signing off here. Somebody, I think it was a Facebook post about the argument about abortion. And Carlos, I see you, all your comments, and appreciate you being here. Don't agree with a lot of what you're saying, obviously. But one thing that made me think was, I think it was someone's son came home and said, he equated it to if you're forcing a woman to have the baby for the purpose of the child or the fetus, the thing that they equated it to was, it's like forcing somebody to have, you can't force someone to donate an organ. You can't force someone to have bone marrow transplant. This is their choice to have their body. You can't force it on them to have these medical procedures. And, I thought that was a good way to think about it. It was like, you can't force, even if it would save a life to have a bone marrow transplant, that's not legal to force somebody to do that. So, this is a woman's choice. It's reproductive justice. It's reproductive rights. And, that was just, I thought, an interesting way of thinking about it, of equating it to another procedure, because it's not legal to force anybody to do anything to themselves like that, even when it does save a life. It's all elective. So, I don't think that we should suddenly say, oh, well, women have no control over their bodies in this instance either. I don't necessarily think I'm changing any minds by saying that, but I just thought it was worth mentioning because it was something that I hadn't heard and it came up, I forget where, a couple weeks ago. Hope you guys will join everybody at the rallies. Thank you for joining us here. tnholler.com, at the TN Holler is where you can find us, and we'll see you next time.